Okay, so our big question is, in terms of modern science, where does this really come from? And a good example of how Western culture made this transition from, being very religious and God-oriented to being more scientific to the beginning of the scientific revolution is an incident, a tragedy which happened in Lisbon on November 1st, 1755. And the big thing to remember that we don't think about now is that November 1st is actually All Saints' Day. We think about October 31st, which is Halloween, and that's lots of fun, and that's candy. But really, originally, Catholic culture was about All Saints' Day, which was a holy day that you went to church and you celebrated, you took Mass. And while all of these people were in church on this holy day, there was an earthquake in 1755. And it was devastating. It was completely devastating. All these people, in these buildings were all dead. Then the earthquake, due to the damage of the structures, fires broke out. Of course, from the seismic activity, we had this, tremendous tsunami, which went up the Tagus River. So you have the city of Lisbon, which is, here, let me go here. Okay, so basically you have a city of Lisbon, which is sort of simultaneously, tumbling down, catching on fire, and being flooded. So it's just sort of like, to them, it was just sort of like hell on earth. And so you have tremendous damage. You have tremendous physical damage, and you have an enormous death toll. They estimate between 10,000 and 15,000 people were killed right away, but then you also have to remember that once the city was devastated, all kinds of other people died of disease and hunger and et cetera, because all the infrastructure that used to be there is now gone. And I have to fix that. It's loss of infrastructure, loss of resources. Okay, so this is our picture of what Lisbon looks like. It's just a nightmare. So how does the rest of Europe, first, modern scientists think that their best estimate is that the earthquake was between 8.5 and 8.8 on the Richter scale, which is just unimaginably huge. The rest of Europe responded to this pretty significantly because it was horrific. So here you have an example of Gabriel Malagridata, I think that's how you say his name, and he basically says the earthquake is because of, it's an example of the wrath of God. The people of Lisbon were sinful and, engaged in all kinds of vice, and that's why God basically smote them with an earthquake. And then you have the Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire, who wrote a whole poem about, which I'm not going to read, about the destruction of Lisbon, and sort of saying, it doesn't make any sense that, Lisbon was sinful and was smote by God with this earthquake, because look at London, look at Paris, look at all these other cities, it's the same thing, they're all doing the same thing, and, so the last line of his poem is, Lisbon is destroyed and they dance in Paris. So in other words, God didn't cause this earthquake, you're being illogical. So here we really have an example of how we're going from a perspective that your life revolves around God. Okay, we're getting into the Enlightenment, the age of reason. Now things happen in your life because of reason. It's really the Enlightenment, which came out of the Renaissance, which leads to the scientific revolution, which is what created our world today. So that's it.